Okay, let's try to picture this for a moment. The year is 1206.
Right.
You're on the plains of North India. It's hot, it's dusty, and the air is just thick with the sense of, well, uncertainty.
Complete uncertainty.
Because Muhammad Ghori, the big guy, the conqueror who seemed absolutely invincible, is suddenly gone, assassinated.
On his way back to Ghazni, and he leaves behind this enormous territory he's just conquered. But, and this is the crucial part, no son.
No clear aim.
None. Just a bunch of really ambitious, really tough generals who are now all kind of staring at each other. The classic power vacuum.
And that's usually when things they fall apart. History tells us the empire fractured.
It should have, but it doesn't. Because out of that chaos, a man steps forward who wasn't a prince, he wasn't a noble, he was in fact a slave.
Qutb-ud-din Aibak.
Qutb-ud-din Aibak.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just manage to hold things together. He starts a dynasty.
Yeah.
A dynasty that is going to fundamentally reshape the entire subcontinent for the next 300 years.
It's one of those moments, isn't it, where the whole trajectory of history just pivots. We're talking about the birth of the Delhi Sultanate.
The very beginning.
And today, we're not just going to be, listing kings and dates. We want to get under the hood. We want to look at the machinery of the state, how it worked, how it survived, and the legacy it left for all of us.
Exactly. The nuts and bolts. That's what's fascinating.
It is. So, welcome everyone to a very special edition deep dive. I am so excited for this one. Now, before we plunge into the world of sultans and scheming nobles, I do have to mention something important.
Go for it.
This is a full summary for UPSC, focused by Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel with PYQ linkage. We are building this from the ground up for anyone who's studying for their exams.
And that means we're going to be really precise with the facts, but we also want to give you that deeper analysis, the kind of stuff you need for those high-level mains answers.
Right, we're not just telling you stories, we're helping you build your answer bank. So, with that in mind, here's a humble request. If you're listening and you're getting value from what we're doing, please subscribe to the channel Simplified UPSC by PPP. It makes a huge difference.
It really does.
And if you're in a position to, please consider supporting us over on Patreon. That support is literally what lets us keep making this kind of super useful content for you.
And on that note, a massive, massive shout out to all of our current supporters. You guys are the ones who make these deep dives possible. We couldn't do it without you.
We absolutely could not. Thank you so much. And also, don't forget to like the video or audio, and please share your valuable comments. We actually read all of them.
We do. And for all you serious learners out there, listen up. We have free notes with practice PYQs, that's previous year questions, and they are available on our Telegram channel.
And one more thing, for those who want the whole package, if you want access to all the videos in this series right away, plus their corresponding premium notes.
And these premium notes are something else. We're talking detailed breakdowns, extra PYQs, even model mains answers, all in a really organized library.
Then you should definitely join the private Telegram library. All you have to do is send a DM on our public Telegram channel to get access.
It's the ultimate study resource for this stuff.
Okay, that's the business out of the way. Let's get to the mission. Our source material today is the Tamil Nadu Board Class XI History textbook. We're digging into chapters 16 and 17.
Chapter 16 gives us that political story of the Delhi Sultanate. And then chapter 17, which is really the focus, takes us deeper into India under the Delhi Sultanate.
And we're going to split this up. First, we'll walk through the political history, the 5 dynasties. Slave, Khilji, Tughlaq, Sayyid, and Lodi.
But not just as a list. We want to see how power evolved, how one dynasty led to the next.
And then part 2, we're getting into the administration, the economy, the culture, what you call the machinery of the state.
Right. Because ruling a place as vast and diverse as India for over 300 years, it isn't a miracle, it's a system. And that's the system we're going to take apart today.
I love it. So let's start at the very beginning. The foundation, the slave dynasty.
Or, to be more historically accurate, the Mamluk dynasty. It runs from 1206 to 1290.
Okay, so let's tackle that name right away. Slave dynasty. To our modern ears, that sounds like a total contradiction. How on earth does a slave become a king?
It's a fantastic question, and it's central to understanding this whole period. The word Mamluk itself is the Quranic term for slave.
Right.
But, and this is a huge but, we need to be very clear about what kind of slavery we're talking about. This is not the chattel slavery that you see, for instance, in the American South much later.
So these aren't people being treated purely as property for, say, agricultural labor?
Not at all. This was military slavery. It was a Central Asian institution. Young men, usually Turks, were bought, They were converted to Islam, and then they were put through incredibly rigorous training in warfare and administration.
So they're more like elite military recruits who just happen to be slaves.
That's a great way to put it. They were highly valued assets. And the theory was, because they had no local family ties, no tribal loyalties, their only loyalty would be to their master.
Then who bought them?
Exactly. So you see this progression. Qutb-ud-din Aibak goes from being a slave of Muhammad Ghori to his most trusted general, and then when Ghori dies, he becomes the Sultan.
His reign is pretty short, though. 1206 to 1210, just 4 years.
It's short, but it's incredibly impactful. First, he effectively severs ties with the old Ghorid kingdom. He's not a governor anymore, he's an independent ruler.
And he sets up his capital in Lahore initially.
Yes, which makes sense. It's a strategic point to watch for invasions from the northwest. But what really made Aibak stand out was his reputation. He was known as Laq-Baksh,
Which means?
the giver of locks.
100,000. So the giver of vast sums of money.
He was famously generous. And you have to think about why. He's a former slave. He needs to legitimize his rule, generosity, patronage. These are ways you win over the existing elite and the religious figures.
And he also starts building things, something very, very famous.
The Qutb Minar. He begins construction. And a key exam point here. He names it after the Sufi Saint Khwaja Qutb-ud-din Bakhtiar Kaki.
Not after himself. A lot of people probably assume that.
They do. Qutb-ud-din Aibak, naming it after Qutb-ud-din Kaki. But it's a crucial detail because it shows how closely these early sultans allied themselves with the Sufi orders. They needed that spiritual legitimacy.
He also built the Qutb-ud-Islam Mosque, didn't he?
Yes, one of the first major congregational mosques in North India. He was laying the architectural, political, and symbolic foundations of the new state.
And then after just 4 years, it all comes to a very sudden end. And the way he dies is, well, it's a classic trivia question.
It really is.
Yeah.
He died playing Shoggun. Basically, yeah. He fell from his horse, and that was it. It's a bizarre end, but it also tells you something about the martial culture of these Turkic rulers. Even their leisure was a form of cavalry practice.
But his death, again, throws everything back into chaos.
Total chaos. His son, Shah, tries to take over, but he's seen as weak, incompetent. The nobles, the generals, they're not going to follow him.
So they look for a stronger hand. And that brings us to Iltutmish. He rules from 1211 to 1236. Now, is it fair to call him the real founder of the Sultanate?
I think that's a very fair assessment. You could say Aibak laid the first stone, but Iltutmish is the one who built the actual structure.
What were his key moves?
First, and maybe most importantly, he moves the capital from Lahore to Delhi.
Why is that so significant?
It's a huge strategic and symbolic shift.
Yeah.
By moving to Delhi, he's basically declaring that this is an Indian kingdom, not just some frontier outpost of a Central Asian empire. He's putting its center of gravity firmly in the subcontinent.
And he had to deal with a pretty major external threat right now.
The biggest one imaginable at the time. Genghis Khan and the Mongols were right on his doorstep.
Wow. That's a what-if moment in history if Genghis Khan had decided to invade India.
The entire history of the subcontinent would be different. But Iltutmish handled it with incredible diplomatic skill. The ruler of Khwarezm, who was fleeing from Genghis, asked for asylum in Delhi.
And giving him asylum would have been like painting a giant target on Delhi.
Exactly. So Iltutmish, very politely but very firmly, refused. He basically told Genghis Khan, look, I'm not interfering. This isn't my fight. And it worked. The Mongols turned their attention elsewhere, and the Sultanate was saved.
That's some high-stakes politics. Internally, though, how did he consolidate his power? He created a special group to help him, didn't he?
He did. The Turkani-Chalgani.
The 40.
The Corps of 40. This was a select group of his most loyal and powerful Turkish slave officers. He knew he couldn't rule this huge territory by himself, so he created this elite cadre to act as the pillars of his state.
But this group would later become a problem.
A massive problem. A classic double-edged sword. They were the kingmakers, which also meant they could be the king breakers if they didn't like who was on the throne.
And for anyone studying for the UPSC or just interested in economics, Iltutmish gives us something really fundamental, the currency.
He does. He standardizes the currency, which is a hallmark of any centralized state. He introduces the silver tanka and the copper cheetle.
And the tanka is the big one.
It is. A silver coin weighing 175 grams. And you can draw a direct line from the tanka to the rupee of the Mughals and eventually the modern Indian rupee. This is its ancestor.
He also finishes the Qutb-ud-din, so he's really completing Aibak's vision in many ways.
Yes, he adds the upper stories.
But then, when it comes to his succession, he does something completely unexpected.
Totally unconventional. He had sons, but he looked at them and basically said they were useless, more interested in pleasure than in ruling.
So he nominates his daughter.
He nominates his daughter, Razia, as his heir. He declared that she was more capable than any of his sons.
Razia Sultan, the first and only female ruler of the Delhi Sultanate.
And she was, by all accounts, brilliant. A great administrator, a skilled warrior. She would lead armies into battle. She also refused to be a token ruler. She abandoned the veil and dressed in the masculine attire of a ruler, the kuva, a coat, and the kula, a cap.
I can't imagine that went over well with the 40.
Not at all. These proud, powerful Turkish nobles could not stomach the idea of taking orders from a woman. It was a constant battle for her.
She tried to build her own power base, right, by promoting non-Turks.
She did. She favored an Abyssinian slave named Yakut, which just infuriated the Turkish nobles even more. They saw it as an affront. Her reign was short, just about 4 years.
And it ends tragically.
She's eventually defeated and murdered. It's a classic story of a capable ruler being brought down by the prejudice and politics of her time.
So after Razia, there's a period of what? Chaos. Puppet rulers set up by the 40.
Pretty much. The 40 are running the show, putting weak rulers on the throne who they can control. This goes on for about a decade.
Until one of their own, one of the 40, decides he's had enough of being a kingmaker and wants to be the king.
Exactly. Ghiyasuddin Balban. He rules from 1246 to 1287.
And Balban is a very different kind of ruler. He's not messing around.
Not at all. He's a complete authoritarian. He had been part of the 40. He had seen the chaos they caused from the inside. So when he takes power, his #1 goal is to restore the power and prestige of the Sultanate.
Which means crushing the very group that he came from.
Precisely. He systematically poisoned and assassinated members of the 40 until the group was completely destroyed. It's the ultimate case of pulling up the ladder behind you.
And he had this very specific, very intense theory of kingship.
Yes, his iron and blood policy. He declared that the Sultan was Zil Ilahi.
The shadow of God on earth.
Exactly. This wasn't just ego. It was a calculated political move. If the king is the shadow of God, then rebellion against the king isn't just treason, it's blasphemy.
And he brought in all these Persian court customs to really drive that point home.
He did. Things that would have been unthinkable to the old Turkish nobles. He introduced Sida.
Prostration, lying flat on the ground before the king.
And Paibos, which is kissing the monarch's feet.
Wow.
Can you imagine? These proud warriors who saw the Sultan as merely the first among equals now had to crawl on the floor and kiss his feet. It was a ritual of humiliation designed to enforce discipline and his absolute authority.
He also introduced the Persian festival of Nowruz.
Yes, all to create this aura of distant, awe-inspiring, divinely sanctioned monarchy.
But he wasn't just about the ceremony. He was a serious law and order man.
Absolutely ruthless. The area around Delhi was plagued by robbers, the Mewadis. They were making the roads unsafe. Balban's response was brutal. He cleared the forest where they hid, built forts, and executed robbers on sight. He made the highways safe for travel and trade.
And his biggest institutional reform, this is a key one for exams, was in the military.
Yes. He understood that the Sultan's power rested on military strength. So he separated the military department from the finance department. He created the Diwani-Aris.
The military department. Why was separating it such a big deal?
Because before Balban, military affairs were often handled by the wazir, the finance minister. This could lead to, inefficiency and corruption.
Right.
By creating a dedicated military department under an Urizi Mumalik, Balban professionalized the army. He ensured that soldiers were paid on time, that equipment was maintained. He needed a strong, efficient force to handle the constant threat of the Mongols in the northwest and to crush any internal rebellions.
So Balban basically forges the Sultanate into a strong, centralized state with an iron fist.
Yeah.
But what happens after he dies?
The old story repeats itself. His successors are weak, incompetent. The system he built depended on a strong personality at the top. Without that, it faltered. And in 1290, the slave dynasty comes to an end.
And the Khiljis take over. Which brings us to our next segment.
The Khilji Revolution, that's what some historians call it.
A revolution.
Because the Khiljis were not considered to be part of that inner circle of purebred Turks who had dominated the nobility. Their rise to power shattered that Turkish monopoly on high office. It opened the door for a more heterogeneous ruling class, including Indian Muslims.
The dynasty is founded by Jalaluddin Khilji. And he was Well, he was a bit of a nice guy, wasn't he?
He was. Maybe too nice to be a sultan in that era. He was old when he came to the throne, and he followed a policy of leniency. He forgave rebels. He let captured thugs go. Just a warning.
Which probably didn't project an image of strength.
It projected weakness. And in that political climate, weakness was fatal.
Especially when you have a nephew and son-in-law like Alauddin Khilji waiting in the wings.
Ah, Alauddin. Now we're talking about maybe the most significant ruler of the entire Sultanate period. In 1296, he comes back from a hugely successful raid on Devagiri in the south, loaded with unbelievable amounts of gold.
His uncle, the Sultan Jalaluddin, goes to greet him.
He does. He goes to Kara to embrace his victorious nephew. And as he's embracing him, Alauddin gives a signal, and his men murder Jalaluddin on the spot.
Brutal.
It's a complete power grab. Treacherous, but incredibly effective. He takes the throne.
And unlike his uncle, Alauddin is all about power, control, and expansion.
Total opposite. He's the first sultan to really push into the south of India in a major way. His general, Malik Kafur, a former slave himself, leads campaigns all the way down to Madurai.
But for our UPSC listeners, the real treasure trove with Alauddin is his domestic reforms, right? The military and the market.
Absolutely. This is where the questions always come from. Let's start with the military. His fundamental change was creating a large, permanent standing army paid in cash.
How was it done before?
Mostly, soldiers were paid through iqas, or land assignments,
Yeah.
or they were expected to live off the spoils of war, paying them a regular salary in cash directly from the central treasury. That's a game changer.
Why? What does it change?
It centralizes loyalty. The soldier's paycheck comes directly from the sultan, not from some local noble. His loyalty is to the state, to the sultan, not to a feudal lord.
And he also brought in sisters to stop corruption in the army.
He did. He was obsessed with efficiency. He introduced the system of dag.
Branding the horses.
Yes, to make sure that high-quality military horses weren't being swapped out for inferior ones during inspections. And he started the Huliya system.
A descriptive role of each soldier.
Exactly, like a written-down ID card describing their features. This prevented the practice of sending proxies during musters. He wanted to know exactly who he was paying and what he was paying for.
But having a huge professional army paid in cash, that's got to be incredibly expensive.
Hugely expensive. And that leads us directly to his most famous and most controversial reform, the market control.
It was a massive UPSC topic, so let's break it down. Why did he do it?
This is the key analytical point for Amain's answer. It wasn't about public welfare. It was a military measure. He couldn't afford to pay his soldiers massive salaries because that would bankrupt the treasury.
So if you can't raise the salary, you do the next best thing.
You lower the cost of living. You make sure that the soldier's small salary can still buy him everything he needs. So Alauddin fixed the prices of essential goods.
And when you say essential goods, you mean everything.
I mean literally everything. Grain, cloth, sugar, cooking oil, horses, cattle, even slaves. He set up 4 separate, highly regulated markets in Delhi for different categories of goods.
How on earth did he enforce that? Price fixing on that scale seems impossible. It usually just leads to hoarding in black markets.
He enforced it through a system of absolute terror. He had a market superintendent, the Shah-e-Mandi, and a higher official, the Diwani-Riyasat. But the real enforcement mechanism was his network of secret spies, the Manhums.
And the punishments were severe.
Unbelievably severe. The most famous example is for cheating on weights. If a shopkeeper was caught giving a customer less than what they paid for, the equivalent weight of flesh was carved from the shopkeeper's body.
Wow. Okay. That would certainly be a deterrent.
It was incredibly effective. The sources say that for his entire reign, the prices in Delhi remained stable, even during times of famine. It was a command economy enforced with brutal efficiency. But again, all to serve the war machine.
He was also a patron of architecture, wasn't he?
He was. His most famous contribution is the Alai Darwaza.
The gateway to the Qutb-ud-din complex.
Yes, and architecturally, it's a huge milestone. It features the first true scientifically constructed dome and arches in India. It shows a real maturation of the Indo-Islamic style.
So Alauddin dies in 1316, and after him there's a bit of chaos again, and then in 1320 the Tughlaq dynasty comes to power.
Founded by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, a tough, capable general who also built the massive, imposing fortress of Tughlaq in Delhi.
But the real star of the Tughlaq show, for all the wrong reasons perhaps, is his son, Muhammad bin Tughlaq.
Oh, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the wise fool. He ruled from 1325 to 1351. He is one of the most fascinating and contradictory figures in Indian history.
He was incredibly well educated, right? A scholar.
A genius by some accounts. He knew philosophy, logic, mathematics, astronomy. He had brilliant, innovative ideas. The problem was his ideas were often completely divorced from reality, and his implementation was disastrous.
Let's talk about his big experiments. First up, the transfer of the capital in 1327.
Right. He decides to move the capital from Delhi all the way to Devagiri in the Deccan, which he renames Daulatabad.
What was the logic behind that?
The logic on paper was actually pretty sound. Daulatabad was more centrally located in his expanding empire. It would give him better control over the wealthy provinces of the south.
Okay, that makes sense. But the execution?
The execution was insane. Instead of just moving his court and his administration, we ordered the entire population of Delhi, every man, woman, and child, to pack up and move.
The entire city?
The entire city. A journey of over 1,500 kilometers, on foot, in the middle of summer.
It must have been a death march.
It was. Thousands died along the way, and then after a couple of years in Daulatabad, he realizes that he can't control the north from the south. The Mongols are raiding the Punjab again, so what does he do?
He orders everyone to march back to Delhi.
Exactly. It was a catastrophe.
Yeah.
It caused immense suffering and generated incredible resentment against him.
And then there was his other famous experiment, the token currency.
Another idea that was brilliant in theory and a disaster in practice. There was a worldwide shortage of silver at the time, so he decides to issue token coins made of bronze or copper that would have the same legal value as the silver tanka.
That's essentially what our money is today. Fiat currency. Its value is based on government guarantee, not the metal it's made of.
Precisely. He was centuries ahead of his time. But the problem was security.
Counterfeiting.
Rampant counterfeiting. The design of the coins was too simple to replicate. So, as the historian Bharani famously wrote, every Hindu's house became a mint.
So people were just making their own money.
They were melting down their copper pots, making coins, and using them to pay their taxes. The market was flooded with fake currency, trade ground to a halt as foreign merchants refused to accept it, and the whole system collapsed.
And he had to recall it all, didn't he?
He did. He promised to exchange all the token coins for real silver and gold from the royal treasury. It nearly bankrupted the state.
It's not all bad, though. He did try to improve agriculture.
He did. He set up a new department, the Diwan-e-Kohi, a Department of Agriculture, and he gave out loans to farmers, called Takavi loans, to help them buy seeds and bring new land under cultivation.
Another progressive idea.
Very. But again, undone by poor implementation and corruption. The officials in charge were often corrupt, and they chose poor quality land for the experiment. It failed in his lifetime. But the idea itself was sound. It was later adopted by rulers like Shah and Akbar.
So Muhammad bin Tughlaq dies, and he leaves the empire in a bit of a mess. He's succeeded by his cousin Firoz Tughlaq.
Firoz Tughlaq ruled from 1351 to 1388. And he's a really complex figure, sometimes called the benevolent administrator, other times called a religious bigot.
He was the opposite of MBT in many ways. He wasn't interested in grand experiments or new conquests.
No, he was all about consolidation.
Yeah.
And he was a prolific builder. He's famous for building canals for irrigation, some of which are still in use in Haryana and Punjab today. He founded new cities like Firozabad and Jaunpur.
And he's known for his welfare measures.
Yes, he established a charity hospital in Delhi, the Dar al-Shifa. He set up a department called the Diwani-Kharat to help poor families and arrange marriages for poor girls. He even set up an employment bureau to help the unemployed.
Sounds pretty good so far, but there's a dark side.
There is. First, his obsession with slaves. He created a department for them, the Diwani Bandigan. He collected a staggering 180,000 slaves.
What did he do with them?
He trained them in various crafts and employed them in royal workshops, but they also formed a powerful, disruptive political faction. They became a huge drain on the treasury and caused immense instability after his death.
And then there was his religious policy. This is where the bigot label comes from.
Yes. Firoz was an Orthodox Sunni Muslim, and he really tried to appease the ulema, the theologians. He imposed the jizya, the tax on non-Muslims, very strictly.
And he extended it to a group that had previously been exempt.
He extended it to the Brahmins. This was a significant departure from previous policy. He also demolished prominent Hindu temples during his military campaigns, like the Jagannath Temple at Puri. It was a policy that alienated a large section of his subjects.
The Tughlaq dynasty just sort of limps on after Firoz, but the final devastating blow comes in 1398.
Timur, or Tamerlane, the Turco-Mongol conqueror from Central Asia. He invades India and sacks Delhi.
And it was a brutal, brutal sacking.
A horrific massacre. He carted off immense wealth and artisans back to his capital in Samarkand. Delhi was left in ruins. It's said that the city took almost a century to recover. The Tughlaq dynasty was effectively finished.
After that, we get the Sayyid dynasty from 1414 to 1451. For exam purposes, are they a major dynasty?
Not really. They are more of an interlude. They were essentially governors who ruled in the name of Timur's successors initially. They controlled a much smaller territory around Delhi.
The next real power shift comes with the Lodis.
The Lodi dynasty from 1451 to 1526. And what's important about them is that they were the first Afghan dynasty to rule Delhi. The previous rulers had all been Turks.
It's founded by Belu Lodi, but the most important ruler is probably Sikandar Lodi.
Yes, Sikandar Lodi was a capable administrator. He's famous for founding the city of Agra, which would later, of course, become the great capital of the Mughals. He also introduced a new unit for land measurement, the Ghazi Sikandari. But like Firoz, he was known for his religious intolerance.
And then we come to the last Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi.
Ibrahim Lodi. He was arrogant, and he alienated his powerful Afghan nobles. He insulted them, he treated them with suspicion.
And one of those unhappy nobles, Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, decides to do something drastic.
He sends an invitation to a ruler in Kabul, a descendant of Timur named Babur, asking him to come and help overthrow Ibrahim.
He probably didn't realize what he was unleashing.
He had no idea. Babur came, but not to help. He came to conquer. And that sets the stage for the First Battle of Panipat in 1526.
Where Babur, with his superior tactics and his use of gunpowder and artillery, crushes Ibrahim Lodi's huge army.
And with that battle, the Delhi Sultanate comes to an end, and the Mughal Empire begins.
What a story. That is an incredible political roller coaster. But as we said at the start, the really deep dive is into the machinery. So let's shift gears. Segment 4, Administration and Economy. This is where the real marks are for UPSC students.
Absolutely, because the administrative framework laid down by the Sultanate didn't just disappear in 1526. The Mughals built on it, the British adapted it, and you can still see traces of it in the Indian administration today.
So let's start at the very top, the central administration. The Sultan is the boss, but who helps him run the show?
He has a council of ministers, essentially. The most powerful official was often the Naib, or the deputy sultan. Below him, you have the wazir.
The prime minister and finance minister all rolled into one.
Yes, he headed the finance department, the Diwani Wazarat. Then we've already mentioned the head of the military, the Arizi Mumalik, who ran the Diwani Ariz.
What were the other key departments?
You had the Diwani Insha, which was in charge of all royal correspondence, super important for sending out the Sultan's orders, and the Diwani Rasalat, which dealt with religious matters and endowments.
And what about the justice system?
Headed by the chief Qazi. For Muslims, civil law was based on the Sharia. Criminal law, however, was largely at the discretion of the Sultan. But, and this is important, for the vast Hindu majority, their own personal laws and village panchayats continued to function, especially in civil matters. The state didn't interfere much at that level.
Okay, now for what is maybe the single most important administrative concept of this period, the Iqta system. You have to know this. Can you break it down for us?
The Iqta system is the absolute backbone of the Sultanate's political and military structure. Let's put it simply.
Please.
The Sultan has a large number of officers and nobles. He needs to pay them. But cash is often in short supply. So instead of a salary in clash, he assigns an officer a piece of land. That piece of land is called an Iqta.
And the officer is the muti or the wali.
Exactly. Now here is the crucial point that trips people up. The muti does not own the land.
Right. It's not a grant of ownership.
It is an assignment of revenue. He is given the right to collect the state's share of revenue from that land. In return for this right, he has to do two main things.
Which are?
1, maintain a fixed number of soldiers and provide them to the Sultan whenever required. And 2, maintain law and order within his Iqta.
And these assignments weren't permanent, were they?
No, and that was a key mechanism of control. The Sultan could, and did, transfer mucus from one Iqta to another every few years to prevent them from developing deep local roots and becoming too powerful.
A very smart system of checks and balances. And what about the land that wasn't given out as Iqta?
That was called Khalisa land. The revenue from this land went directly into the central treasury for the Sultan's own expenses.
Okay, let's zoom out from the center and look at the local administration. How was the empire divided up?
You have a clear hierarchy. The empire is divided into provinces, which are essentially the Iqtas. Below the province, you have the Sheikh, which is like a district headed by a Shikar.
Okay.
Below the Sheikh is the Pargana, a sub-district headed by an Emir. And at the very bottom, you have the village.
And the village officials are really important because they're the link between the state and the people.
They are. The two key officials were the Muqaddam, who was the village headman, and the Patwari, the village accountant who kept the land records. These were typically hereditary Hindu officials. The Sultanate was like a layer of administration placed on top of this existing ancient village structure.
Let's talk economy. We often think of this period as just constant warfare, but the economy was actually thriving, wasn't it?
It was. The political unification of North India under a single power, the Sultanate, actually created a safer environment for trade. The sultans built roads and made them secure.
And this led to the growth of cities.
Massive urbanization. Cities like Delhi, Lahore, Multan, Jaunpur, they all became major commercial centers. And industry grew as well. Cotton textiles, of course, were a huge industry.
There were some new introductions, right?
Yes. Sericulture, the rearing of silkworms for silk production, was introduced and became widespread. And perhaps the most transformative technology was the paper industry.
Paper. We take it for granted, but that's a huge deal.
It's a revolution in administration and learning. The use of paper replaced palm leaves and birch bark, making it so much easier to maintain records, write books, and run a complex bureaucracy.
What about foreign trade? Where was India trading with?
The main trade routes were westwards, to the Persian Gulf and West Asia. We were exporting textiles, spices, and indigo, and we were importing crucial military supplies, especially high-quality war horses from Central Asia and Arabia.
Okay, that gives us a good picture of the state. Let's move to our next segment. Society, culture, and architecture. How were people living?
It was a very dynamic and complex society. Among the Hindus, the caste system remained very rigid. The coming of the Turks and Afghans added new layers to the social hierarchy.
What about the position of women?
It varied. One notable social change was that the purdah system, the practice of veiling women, which came with the Turks, became much more widespread in North India. It was even adopted by many upper-class Hindu families as a mark of high status.
And sati was still practiced?
Yes, the practice of sati was prevalent, particularly among some of the upper castes.
And what about slavery? We talked about military slaves, but was it more widespread?
It was. Slavery was a major social institution, as we saw with Firoz Tughlaq's huge household of slaves. But it was a complex institution. A slave could, in theory, rise to the highest position in the state. The slave dynasty itself is the ultimate proof of that potential for upward mobility.
Let's talk about something more visible, the art and architecture, this new Indo-Islamic style that emerges.
It's a true synthesis. It's a fusion of two very different architectural traditions. The Turks brought with them features from Persia and Central Asia, the arch, the dome, and the minaret. They also brought a superior type of mortar for construction.
And what did the Indian tradition bring to the table?
It brought incredibly skilled stonecutters and masons, and a tradition of decorative art using motifs like the lotus and the bell. The pre-Islamic Indian style was primarily trebit, using beams and lintels.
So you get this amazing combination.
You do, and you could see it evolve over time. In the early slave dynasty period, they were often in a hurry. The Qutb-ud-din Mosque in Delhi, for example, was built using materials and even pillars from demolished Hindu and Jain temples. You can literally see the fusion.
And then under the Khiljis,
it becomes more refined. We talked about the Alai Darwaza. That shows a mastery of the true arch and the scientific dome. They start using red sandstone and marble for decoration. It's much more sophisticated.
And the Tughlaqs.
The Tughlaq style is very distinct. They were either more austere or just didn't have as much money. Their buildings are massive, solid, almost fortress-like. They use gray stone, not decorative red sandstone. And their key architectural feature is batter walls that slope inwards.
A sloping wall is a giveaway for Tughlaq architecture.
It's a dead giveaway. Think of Tughlaq Fort. It looks powerful and imposing, but not delicate.
Finally, let's touch on literature and music. There is one name from this period that just towers above everyone else.
Amir Khusrau.
The Parrot of India.
Tutti-Hind. He was a true polymath. A poet, a musician, a scholar. He served under multiple sultans, from Balban all the way to the Tughlaqs.
What were his main contributions?
In poetry, he created a new Persian style called Sabaki-Hind, the Indian style. In music, he's credited with inventing the sitar by modifying the Indian veena. He experimented with new ragas. He wrote historical works like the Tughlaq-Nama.
And he was a great symbol of that cultural fusion we've been talking about.
He was the embodiment of it. He famously wrote with pride that he is an Indian Turk and that he preferred to speak in Hindavi, the local language. He celebrated the culture, the flora, the fauna of India.
And it wasn't just him. There was a lot of translation happening, right?
Yes. Many Sanskrit works, especially on medicine and music, were translated into Persian. A famous collection of stories called the Tutu-Nama, or the Book of the Parrot, was translated during this period.
And we can't forget the historians.
No, without historians like Ziauddin Barani, who wrote the Tarikh-i-Firoz Shahi, we wouldn't know half of what we know about rulers like Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Barani's critical account is our main source for those disastrous experiments.
Fantastic. Okay, we have covered the history, the administration, the culture. Now, for the final crucial segment, let's link this all directly to the exam. PYQ linkage and model questions.
Let's do it. This is where we turn knowledge into marks.
So if you're in that exam hall, what are the classic traps the paper setter is going to lay for you on the Delhi Sultanate?
Trap number 1, without a doubt, is confusing the different departments. The Diwans.
Okay, give us the brief down.
They will try to make you mix up Diwani Ariz and Diwani Kohi. Just remember, Ariz sounds like army. It was the military department set up by Balban.
And Kohi?
Think K for Krishi, which means agriculture. Diwani Kohi was the agriculture department of Muhammad bin Tughlaq.
What are other common mix-ups?
Diwani Riyasat versus Diwani Kaurat. Riyasat was for the market reforms of Alauddin Khilji. Kaurat means charity, and that was the department set up by Firoz Tughlaq.
Okay, that's a great tip. What's trap number 2?
Who built what? This is a favor for multiple choice questions.
Let's run through the big ones. Qutb-ud-din.
Started by Qutb-ud-din Aibak, completed by Iltutmish. Alauddin Khilji.
The fortress of Tughlaq.
Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, the founder of the dynasty.
Good. What's trap number 3?
Chronology. They love chronology questions. You absolutely have to know the order of the 5 dynasties.
Slave, Khilji, Tughlaq, Sayyid, Lodi.
You need a mnemonic for that. Something silly that sticks in your head. Maybe. Smart kids talk so loud. SKTSL.
Smart kids talk so loud. I like it. Okay, that's great for the prelims. What about for mains? How do you approach a descriptive question?
For mains, it's all about analysis, not just listing facts. If you get a question on Alauddin Khilji's market reforms, don't just list the 4 markets and the price of wheat.
What should you do?
You need to analyze the motive. Ask the question, were these reforms for economic welfare or for military necessity? The answer, as we've discussed, is military necessity. That's the higher level analysis that gets you the marks.
What about a question on the Iqta system?
You discuss its dual function. It was a mechanism for both revenue collection and military mobilization. You should also analyze how it helped in centralizing power, but also how it contained the seeds of decentralization. When the Sultan was weak, the powerful mutis could become independent hereditary lords.
And a final theme for mains.
Cultural synthesis. A great essay topic. You can talk about how the Sultanate period was not just a period of conflict, but also one of incredible fusion in architecture, in music, and in language. The birth of Urdu in the military camps and markets is a product of this era.
Brilliant. That is a fantastic exam-focused breakdown. We have come a long way in this deep dive.
We certainly have.
So, to sum it all up, we started this journey with a slave, Qutb-ud-din Aibak, dying in a polo accident, and we've ended it with Ibrahim Lodi being defeated by Babur's cannons at Panipat. 300 years of history.
A transformative period.
It really is. And that brings me to a final provocative thought for you to chew on. The Delhi Sultanate is so often seen as just a bloody prelude to the glorious Mughals. But I want you to think about this. Look at that administrative machine we just took apart. The ecosystem for revenue, the standardized currency, the spy networks, the district-level administration. How much of the modern Indian administrative state, the bureaucracy, the role of a district collector who's like a modern muti, the obsession with land records, how much of that actually has its deep roots, not in the British Raj, but right here in these political experiments of the 13th and 14th centuries?
It's a question of continuity. The names and the titles change, but the fundamental structure of how you rule a vast, complex subcontinent from a center in Delhi, that structure has a surprisingly long history.
Something to think about. All right, that is all the time we have for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It really has. And one last time, if you found this summary helpful, if it helped you connect the dots on the Delhi Sultanate, please do us a favor and subscribe to Simplified UPSC by PPP.
And if you are able, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It truly helps us keep the research going and the lights on.
Don't forget to check the public Telegram channel for all those free notes and the PYQs we talked about.
And for the full organized library with premium notes and those model mains answers, send a DM on the public channel to join the private library.
It's worth it. Keep asking questions.
Keep connecting the dots.
Keep learning. And we'll see you in the next deep dive.